Well, there goes the neighborhood. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Dave's Gone By radio program of the stream with me, yours truly, Dave Lefkowitz, and, of course, my darling and adorable wife, Joyce. No, that's not. Just waving off camera as we do our Facebook feed because we're very excited today. We have actually a very special guest live with us in the neighborhood on this Saturday morning, February 10th, 2018. And before we even welcome them, I do want to say hi to all the Facebook folks who are joining us, including John and Daniel. Oh, good morning, John DeMarco, and Matt, and David, and Glynis, and Cheryl, and Joseph, and a couple of people who logged on a little earlier. I can't see them anymore. But please, welcome to the neighborhood. Send me your comments right through here on Facebook. If we get a chance, we'll read them. But most importantly, we're calling this episode Mic Drop. Getting a little visual pun there. Mic Drop. Because the person right next to me, his name is Mike. He's Mike Peters, the author of a book called The Cornfield. Just came out. It's from Greeley Tribune. What is the actual press on this?
Yes, it is the Greeley Tribune.
Greeley Tribune Press has put this book out about his early years as a reporter here in Colorado for the Trib. He's also known to Joyce.
Beloved from his blog. And say it.
Okay. Beloved from a column that we do, or that we look at from the Greeley Tribune here every week. Because if you've listened to, thank you, the Dave's Gone By over the past couple of years, you've known that one thing that saves me a lot of work from trying to create something from scratch is grabbing things from other places and stealing them. So
you credit mine.
I do credit them, but I still steal the material because there's two different columns in the Greeley Tribune. And
David, you enact it.
I reenact.
You bring it to a theatrical presence, yeah.
I do. I believe that I do. Thank you.
You perform it. You perform his work.
I do. I think Oscar-worthy, in fact.
No.
If you had better lines to speak in, it might be Oscar-worthy.
Well, you're the one who's writing the lines, bro.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Mike Peters. Did I mention his name is Mike Peters?
Yes,
good. Well, he is Mike Peters. And he has been compiling. Now, is it just the 100 years ago, or are you also responsible for Coplog?
The Coplog today, I don't. When I first came to the Tribune 45 years ago, they did a daily police log. I go every morning over the police station and copy off their overnight shift and all the things, and then put it in every day in the paper. Then as things got busier, we extended to once a week, and that's what they're doing now. But
the joy of it, and one of the reasons that we do a mix of the Coplog and the Greeley 100 years ago. We call our segment Greeley Crimes and Old Times. We've been doing it every week. But the joy of it is that, at least in recent times, the Coplog was pulling out the goofiest, funniest, zaniest things. Did it start that way, or did it start as, these are just the crimes of Greeley?
This is a book that John Seelmeyer and I put out in 1977, I think it was, something like that, of the best of the police logs. It's called Quick Call a Cop. It was illustrated by Alan Wilkes, who was an artist for the Tribune. And it has the craziest things. A person reported sitting on the curb reading in the dark. The officer told men to move on. Report of a man walking in the street swinging his cane at passing cars. So
that would be me.
They had crazy things back then, too.
Changed. Apparently,
that's right.
We also, so in Greeley, there's 8th and 8th now is the vortex of a lot of stuff.
Oh, yes.
So we noticed there's like also regional things. Like there's a lot of reporting about hobos from, or chicken stealing. Right. And then a lot of stuff now, 8th and 8th, about people wandering the streets doing, like, yelling at cars as well. So it's really
most of those are about me, actually. But so even
they
back
in a heavy role in this back then and now today, I'm sure that it's...
But I love the idea that it wasn't recent, that it because even when you first started doing it, you were looking for the weirder, goofier things.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Which is wonderful.
David, to ask you, so you don't do anything. What we find is you don't do anything that's like, your book is about a serious event, the Cornfield.
Yes.
That's a whole other thing, but you don't do anything that's very tragic, except sometimes we wonder the follow-up, you know?
Yeah.
Do you ever learn the follow-up?
Yes, I'm working on one right now of a murder in Greeley 10 years ago that got national attention. And I'm working on the 10th anniversary story for the Tribune, which
Is
will
that
come
the
out.
nursing student?
Yes.
Whoa! I work with nurses. Yeah, that was
Well,
awful.
no, this was another one. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is beside the nursing student that I killed. What was this? Yeah.
This was a police officer's wife who was killed by another police officer's wife. They were having an affair. And he killed the other officer. She killed the other officer's wife, and she's now serving life in prison and without parole.
So why follow up? Was there another angle
It's
to this?
10-year anniversary.
Oh, okay.
So
Happy death anniversary to her. No, but
I've sent a letter to the woman who did it in prison to see if she wants to talk about it. And
Would you
I've
go
got
to
all
prison, Mike? You would go to prison and talk
I've done
to
that
them?
before, yeah. But in this case, probably I'm just asking her to write back because I don't have time. When I did this book, the man who was arrested for this murder, I sent him a letter and said, "Would you like to talk about how you feel on this?" And he wrote back and said, "Not without you paying me." So I didn't go.
Whoa.
After the book came out.
Is that
Oh,
common
yeah.
where
Oh,
people
yeah.
ask you to pay them for stuff?
Yes. And in this case, he wrote me a letter just last week about the book, telling me he'd like me to come down and interview him now.
for free.
So for free. So I'll probably tell him, if you'll pay me, I'll go down there.
Now, what do you say to people who would look at maybe a book like this and you're going to talk to folks in prison and people who are guilty of these horrible crimes and would say you're glorifying them? Why don't you just let them rot in prison? Why give them even a voice?
I think everybody should have a voice, although in this case, his voice came on the witness stand when I covered it. Let me explain the Cornfield.
Yeah, please, please,
That's
please.
Please do give context.
40 years ago, a woman named Mary Pierce was working in a 7-Eleven store. She just graduated from UNC, was a late recruit into the Air Force, and until she went into the Air Force, she was just filling in at UNC. A woman asked her to fill in a night shift for her in August of 1977. She was kidnapped, and police searched for her, found her body 2 days later in a cornfield. It's a
Greeley, Mike?
Yeah.
just
It was
west
the
of Greeley.
worst Fritzler maze ever.
It was
Which 7-Eleven is it?
the one that was downtown. It's now a liquor store across the street from KFKA Radio.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
And the cornfield is, we just moved out to West Greeley, and we live just a mile from the cornfield now.
Is
where
that
she
what
was
made
found.
you interested in the case?
Well, no, the case, on the night that she was kidnapped, I was in a ride-along with the police on a big drug bust.
Oh.
And we heard 3 beeps come over the radio saying a clerk is missing in the 7-Eleven store. They couldn't go in there because they were on this big drug bust. But I followed it from that time on. I was there when her body was found. I was there when they announced they'd found the guy 33 years later.
That was the thing, yeah.
Oh.
They called a psychic in on the case, and that's several chapters in here about the psychic and what he found in this case and in 2 other cases.
Mike, you seem like such a lovely man, but you were surrounded by such gruesome. You're like, oh yeah, then they found the body in a cornfield. How did you? I know a little bit about your training, and your time at UNC, but how did you get attracted to this kind of death and dark side of life, right?
prepares
But that's it. Don't you think
when I went to the Tribune, I didn't know I'd be covering police.
Yeah.
They hired me out of the clear blue sky.
Yeah.
Actually, they hired me and said, "Don't tell anybody you've been hired because we haven't fired the guy you're replacing yet."
Oh.
So
Okay.
when I came to the Tribune,
Awkward.
when I came to the Tribune, they gave me the police beat. They put me by a window because they didn't want to buy a police radio. So every time I heard a siren out the window, I had to call the police and find out what was going on. And I like to write very much.
Yeah.
And so this put me in touch with what was going on in Greeley and what handling this type of thing. In the cornfield, well, I'll tell you something about the psychic.
Please.
A year after she was found, they had two brothers they had for suspects, but no arrest because they couldn't pin them to the scene exactly. But they called in a psychic, and I got a call, anonymous call, the cops are bringing in a psychic on the Mary Pierce case. Click. So I called the DA, and he said, you need to come over here. So I went over to the DA's office, and there was the DA and the sheriff and the police chief. And they said, we have called in a psychic because this guy has worked some good things. And it's only going to cost us $100. 2 other departments are using him too. Wow. And if you write anything about it, he won't come. He doesn't want publicity. So if you can go and write something now, he won't come, and we'll just say, we're not getting the psychic. Or you can keep quiet, and you can have the whole story after he's gone.
Of course.
Duh.
Right.
So what happened during that, I knew they had him out there in the cornfield. And I just wanted to see what he looked like. So I wasn't going to stop or anything. I just drove past. He was talking to the cops, and he stopped, and he said, a newspaper reporter knows I'm here. But he won't do a story yet. And the cops looked up and saw me drive by right at that moment.
So, Mike, why can't he pick the lotto numbers? Did you ask him what lotto numbers were? Come on now.
You would think so.
You had access to lotto numbers.
Good point.
He spent part of the time in Lakewood on a homicide case, one in Fort Collins on a murder, and then back to Greeley. And he had great impact on those other 2 cases. Not so much in Greeley, except he opened the police's eyes that there may be 3 people involved, which could mean these 2 brothers that they thought, plus the guy that was arrested. What happened on the one that was arrested, they had no DNA when there was no such thing as DNA in 1977. Finally, they tested it 20, 30 years later.
Wow.
And it hit, 3 years after that, it hit it on the national scene. And they went down to Florida and arrested this guy.
What made them reopen the cold case in the first place? I mean, this is dead 30 years.
They just, every once in a while, they'll assign a detective to the case. And in this case...
He's looking through the book here at the moment.
I'm trying to find...
Sure.
Everything's blank.
By the way, Mike Peters here, who was the author of the book, The Cornfield.
They gave it to a detective at the sheriff's office, and she started going through the evidence. And they didn't know they had DNA samples then, because the original DNA samples were destroyed by CBI when they tested the blood type and were thrown out. So they didn't have any. And her going through this huge locker of evidence found a little bitty tab with DNA evidence on it. And that's how she solved it.
Plus, the corn tasted really bad for about 3 years after that.
And it's still a cornfield out there.
Was she buried in the cornfield?
No. Her family was from New Mexico at the time. She was a Air Force brat, and both her parents had died. Her sister and brothers came out, and they had the funeral here, and she's buried in the Evans Cemetery.
Oh, wow.
And which I talk about in here. I explain where the grave is. We have a picture of it in here, and what it's like out there now. So
it's such good closure for the family. You know, you think like whoever's left in the family, or even her. I mean, I like murder mysteries, but they're fake. A lot of it.
Real.
Some are real on the on TV. But I think it's closure, because sometimes you hear when they interview the family, they say, we just don't know what happened. I think it's the closure piece they want.
Yes.
Was it closure for you? Was it cathartic writing the book?
Well, see, I was there at the beginning, when she was found. I was there when they started the investigation 33 years later. I did a story then. When they found him, I did a story then, and I covered the trial.
Wow.
So... when the trial started, or even long before that, I was thinking about a book on this case, just because it was so many strange things. So I'd written part of it. Then I retired, and I could finish it up, and that's what I did. So it just I had time to write then, and that's what.
Well, actually, you say you're retired, and I'm a little confused about this because, aside from writing this book, this is retirement in the Trump era, essentially. It's like no one can.
This is work retirement.
He's also the author of compiling all these No, this is not the Cop-Log book. This is the Greeley 100 Years Ago column that you also do. So how much are you still involved in week to week at the Greeley Trib?
I write 2 columns a week.
That used to
This
be a
column-
full-time job in the newspaper business.
The Monday column and what's called the Gnarly Trombone.
Right.
That is a humor column I've been writing for 45 years or so. It is, the title came in the old days, the Tribune.
Oh, yeah.
Show the hand.
This is a flag, Greeley Tribune.
Hold it up a little.
And it was,
so we
of course,
can actually
Greeley's
see it.
handwriting right across there.
Cool.
And a paper in Cincinnati saw that handwriting, couldn't read it, and said, "We'd like to welcome a new newspaper to America, the Gnarly Trombone." And when we found that, my wife suggested that error would make a good title for my column. And so
So what
that's-
you used to call my penis, actually, which is just kidding.
I think it's very catchy. It's a nice
Gnarly,
title.
yeah. Well, it's been around for 45 years. Your column has.
yes.
So, explain to folks what the Gnarly Trombone consists of in terms of your column. Humor about what?
humor about the city of Greeley mostly, and I poke fun at the city and at the city manager. Today I wrote a serious column about officers being killed in the line of duty, and occasionally I'll write a serious one just because I feel that need at times.
How do you get away with all the because a lot of people don't like fun poking, you know. Some people have very fragile egos, and
Well,
how do you, because they know you and they respect you, is that how you get, you know, they're
think
like, oh, it's
I've
Mike.
been doing it for so long.
It's Mike's good.
And
yeah.
the city manager here, Roy Otto, is a great sport. When I
Good sense
retired,
of humor.
I always bring him up in something, and I complained a lot about the traffic light at 47th Avenue and 10th Street, because if you're on 47th Avenue, it's over by
yeah,
Walmart. It's always red.
Yep.
And so when I retired,
That's his complaint with every traffic.
10th Avenue, 10th friggin' Avenue, yes.
when I retired, Roy Otto brought a city sign to me that they had made that said, "This light never turns green, thanks to Mike Peters."
Oh my God.
I've got that hanging on my wall of my den now. So.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, man. But let me ask, in the years of your doing even the humor column, the Gnarly Trombone, did you ever have a column where you fine, no problem, and then suddenly you got tons of angry mail from crazy people?
Yes, all the time.
Like?
I've had 5 death threats. We've had the police have to watch the house.
You?
Yes. Oh yeah. Police
Were you
have had to
killed?
No.
No, David, he's here.
Yeah.
The police have had to watch the house at times. They've had restraining orders on a guy who threatened to come kill me.
About what? What were they so angry about?
Mostly crime stories, in which that what I've written for the police. And nothing on the trombone, but the others. People get angry.
Yeah, and there's some pretty scary stuff that happens. So you think,
Well, sure.
And people who do naughty things might be naughty people, so they're not, you
That's
know.
exactly right.
Wow.
Is there ever a story that you regret that you wrote or you had to retract?
I don't think they retract.
We
Well-
haven't retracted anything. Some of them are very difficult to write because it's so hard on the family at times and things like that.
Yes.
I had one that it was a murder out by Kersey. I was there when they did a story when they found the body. I did a story when they made the arrest. I interviewed the guy in jail twice. Then I was called for jury duty on his case.
You can't.
Oh, you can't. Well,
Oh, I had to go.
Yeah, but you can't.
And I was
be
sitting
on
in the
jury,
audience. There was
yeah.
100 of us sitting out there, and the judge said, "If you have any reason why you don't think you can serve," and I raised my hand, and he said, "You just have to." Mike, is that you? and the DA went up, and they'd look at me and talk and laugh, and look at me and talk and laugh, and finally the judge said, "Peters, get the hell out of here."
yeah.
So I left.
You can, you know, because you're not supposed to read any newspaper accounts of the story, and if you wrote them, what are you supposed to do? Like, you know,
You're not allowed to read a story about it. Doesn't mean you can't write a story about it.
That's
Can
right.
you imagine it'd be like, we'd like does anyone have any context about the crime? You'd be like, yes, they found DNA evidence on the whatever. I mean, whoa.
It happens.
So basically, it's a good way to get out of jury duty.
Yes,
is what
it
you're.
is. Yes, it is.
That's the best way. Be a reporter for the. So you've been with the Greeley Trip for 40, how many years?
40 years
Wow.
full time, and then I retired
Technically retired.
7 years ago.
writing.
Yeah.
So
So how has Greeley changed for you in 4.5 days? I mean, and how long have you been living in Greeley? Remind me again.
well, I came here in
You went to school
'62.
1962.
school.
Yeah.
And we moved away to eastern Colorado where I taught for 2 years and then came back. So we've been here about 55 years or so.
And don't you want to mention someone who's lovely in your life, or who you met at the dorm?
That's right. Right across the street here, I lived in a house, an apartment building. I lived on the front porch that was glassed in. That was my house.
Yeah.
And my wife lived right across the street in the dorm.
Oh.
We got married in 67, 50 years ago.
That's awesome.
Mazel.
And she taught. She's retired from Greeley Central as a teacher. And we just have a wonderful time.
Does she correct your columns?
I read her. I usually have her read my columns. She did this one this week because I had a couple things in it she needed to correct, and so she does a good job at that.
Does she ever give you ideas for your gnarly
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
What's your favorite gnarly trombone that you ever wrote?
Oh my gosh.
One or two of them.
That's hard to pick.
I know.
That's so hard
They're all
to
your
pick.
babies,
Yeah.
but there's got to be one or two that you feel really a lot of people feel the first one,
Or
or
something maybe super silly, or maybe something super,
I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm
Okay.
sorry, but it's just.
I mean,
there's been
David,
so
40-something years. I mean,
yeah, well, true.
I read 50 of them a year for 45 years. So there's been a few.
Okay, well, what about your favorite cop log items or 100 years ago items? Ones that you couldn't stop laughing
Probably I
for
like
a week.
that.
Yeah.
Last year I did one on Halloween week,
Oh.
and the Halloween in Greeley 100 years ago was crazy. They asked people to come out and stand on street corners to watch for the kids. The kids stole cars and parked them in porches.
Oh my
They
God.
stole all the signs in the city.
In 1916?
Yes.
Wow.
And police chief in 1916 made an order that anybody could arrest a kid on the street for any reason and bring him in the police station just to cover it. So.
And we think
It
that
was
kids
crazy.
get crazy on Halloween today.
And 4th of July, too. I did one on the 4th of July, and it said kids can shoot guns, but they have to shoot them in the air. And they can use explosives, but nothing larger than a stick of dynamite.
Wow.
So,
Well, we love all the stuff you've written about. We have a theme about hobos,
oh, yeah.
and then also chickens. So David used to read the story and say, "Is this current, Greeley, current times, or is it Greeley old times?" And the hobos and chickens one could have been either way. They'd go either way about lost chickens, and yeah.
I tried to, sorry, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I would try to fool her.
Yes.
But invariably, when somebody received a call or the police department received a phone call, you already knew it wasn't like
No, but the
1916.
chicken part was
The chickens
chickens really were probably the main.
However,
piece.
beating up hobos continues to this day, which is
Or the other thing we found were a lot of people who would hallucinate or think people were in their homes or
Yes.
think, attacking squirrels. Those were big, I see a squirrel on my lawn, he looks suspicious, those kind of strange
and
animal.
alcohol.
Yeah,
was
oh, yes.
the big thing, right? because everything was Colorado was dry, and those evil people in Wyoming were shipping stuff down, and sneaking it in.
Through the squirrels and the chickens,
yeah.
I think.
Well, what is fun about that column is that I have the original papers at home. They're in bound editions, and I just go through those old yellow pages 100 years ago and can.
Mike, we
whatever I
thought you
want.
were sitting in Michener Library with microfiche, going through microfiche. That's what we imagined, right? That was our.
Well, back in the day when you had to do your columns, let's say 30, 40 years ago, so you would physically come to the Trib offices, type in a typewriter, and then would you
Yes.
sit with a typesetter, or there'd be wax? And what was the deal?
You write your story, and then we pass it on to the city desk, which was the city editor.
Right.
They would read it and proof it and make sure if they had any questions or if they needed to make changes. Then it would go back to the press room and the typesetter, which would type and set type
Yeah.
to be printed for the story.
Up until now that you have a computer, do you like it better, or do you kind of miss?
I miss the old days somewhat, but it's so much faster now.
Oh, yes.
And you can, for instance, the shutdown of the government. We couldn't have we couldn't have covered that because it was late at night, and so it'd be a day late. On this one, they had it in the next morning's paper.
So the timing element, it's
That's
a quicker
right.
turnaround.
And there's so much going on today.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up with everything.
Do you think you'd ever do a blog or WordPress or make your own website, or do you
I'm not that computer savvy. That's what my wife handles. she does a good job taking
maybe
care
more
of me.
books? I think you're doing the second, third. You're going to start doing I have a series of book feeling. Yeah.
Well, I've did a book called 76 Gnarly Trombones, which was my columns.
Yeah.
And they've asked if I could do that again, so I'll probably do that this summer, maybe.
Oh, yay.
Do that.
And do you think this will become a series, like there'll be a Greeley
I think so.
1918s?
Yes.
And actually, you've done this so long, how about going backwards and Greeley 1916, 15,
No, I didn't
12?
do it before I retired. So, but what is nice about this book is that my wife scanned the advertisements, and
That's
so we've got the
awesome.
original advertisements from 100 years ago
Yes.
also.
So awesome.
It is really neat.
And by the way, tell people, please, how they can get
Yes,
copies
how they can order
of
your
this book as well as your...
Both books are available on Amazon.
Cool.
This is at the Tribune. This is just in its third printing and will be available at the Tribune on Monday. And you can also get them at the...
So, Mike, I write as well, but getting a cover to look good is a hard part. I love your cover.
Oh,
so who
thank you.
designed your cover? Did you?
Well, I told them what I wanted. And the woman at the
Cornfield,
Tribune
yeah.
designed it, and I couldn't believe it. It was exactly what I wanted.
It really looks beautiful, but also a little ominous.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got a little
That's a
ominous
picture
feeling. Yeah,
That's a picture of the original Cornfield.
it's the real Cornfield.
I shot this last year, but that
Wow.
was the corn that was in the field then.
Look at that.
Now, the cool thing is, you said this is now already in its third printing. So how many did they do of the first printing, the second, and then already, 3?
This will probably make 600 or 700 copies.
That's, in this day and age, that's pretty darn good.
And it's selling very well on Amazon also.
Is there a Kindle?
Yes, there is also Kindle.
And do you do book signings? Because you're that's what I was thinking.
I've done
Yeah.
several book signings, and it's been great because the cops that work the case have come up there, and I've talked to them. I talked to one man who was the coroner in the case.
Oh, wow.
And he said, "Did you know what happened in the trial?" And I said, "Well, I was there." And he said, "Well, they read from my report because they thought I was dead. They thought the coroner had died." So,
like, hello.
yeah, that's what he.
I'm here.
So
I can
but
testify.
That's another great way to avoid jury duty. If everybody
guess
thinks you're dead.
faking your death will get you out of being called on the stand as the coroner.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known that was the case because I
That's
would have gotten it
funny.
in the book, but I didn't know that.
You should when you assign the book to him, you should say to the former.
Well, wait a minute. If there's another edition, you
past.
can add an addendum, and you can add little things that you've learned
That's right. Well, I
since.
had to make one change. I said that he was found guilty of second-degree murder for some reason. And even the assistant DA that handled the case missed it. It was first-degree murder. He was convicted.
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
Whoa,
That is a big
you
one,
were
so
trying to be
that's-
nice.
But we made that correction. So
That's
it's-
why-
So that's corrected in,
Yeah.
in the new version of
and
this.
we also have photos in here
It's got pictures.
Photos, yeah.
of.
Oh, I want to see a boggy.
Ugh, David, I saw the store. That was kind of creepy.
There's the scene with the cop there. Tony Malosnik, who was the chief investigative officer, and helped a lot with this book.
Yeah.
I said, "I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of you in the book," and he said, "Oh, you do. That's me right there."
Oh my God.
Really tiny.
Yeah, it's so clear, Mike. I see it. And now, how could we have missed that?
Well, he's standing in a cornfield, so I guess that makes you a stalker. Stalk corn.
Oh,
Oh.
no.
Yeah.
That's the first bad pun of the day.
This is a nibbling of one. Isn't it? Oh,
no.
God.
Wow.
So, we've been talking with the delightful Mike Peters of still, even though he's retired, still the Greeley Tribune, the author of The Cornfield, and of course the Greeley 1917, the compilation, and still the stories in the Trib of... you are not involved with Coplog now, but you are involved still with Gnarly Trombone and 100 Years Ago.
Yes.
So do you want to hang with us? Because we normally do our segment called Greeley Crimes and Old Times that is based on those two columns.
You
And
can read from this if you want.
let's do it. Let's do the old one.
for it.
And Hun, do you want to swing around so we can actually...
I'll talk for me. I'll just
Well,
stand.
because the mic you can't, I got to do like this.
that's
So this way you
okay.
can... Okay. All right.
I can stay on this side, David.
All right, here we go. So this is from Quick. Call a Cop. This, unfortunately, is not available unless at some point they reprint it.
Yeah.
But this goes back about 25 years, and it's the best of the Greeley Police Log, edited by Mike Peters and John Seelmeyer. So I'm just going to flip. Do you want to flip randomly, or I can do a random
you can
flip?
do it.
I can do a
Whatever
random flip. Here we go. At 3:26 a.m., woman reported renter woke her and said he was all dressed and ready to go feed the sheep.
Time to go.
However,
Yes.
He had no sheep. Man was taken for psychiatric observation.
Listen, at least he was ready, dressed and ready to feed the sheep. And at least he was her renter. Let's give some credit where credit's due.
So, what is your process when you're putting a book together like this of saying just the funniest, the weirdest ones?
We just went through all past editions, and you can see the dates on here. There's 1977.
The sheep one was from 75, I should say.
Wow.
Forgive me for not adding that part.
We just went back through the old Tribunes and found what we thought were the funniest ones.
Hysterical.
So there was a man back in 1972 who called the police station and said he was too drunk to be in a public area. So what do you think happened, dear?
You know what I think? Self-assessment is always healthy. That's a good self-assessment. Good job.
But not always the brightest thing to do. So what happened?
I think he was arrested.
He was arrested for public intoxication, yes. It's like, couldn't call family, like, drive me home, please. Called the cops. Theater. This may have been the Sterling, I guess.
Oh, no, not the Sterling Theater.
Also from 1972. Theater manager reported a drunk walked in without paying for a ticket. Wow. Yeah.
But there's nowhere. Find one with a hobo.
Yeah, I'm just flipping. I'm just
or chicken. Come on, David.
I mean, I'm just looking at this book now. I don't have time to prepare. Here's one. Back in 1971.
Yeah.
I was 6 years old at this point.
That, no.
Don't do that one.
I don't want to hear you being 6 years old when I was working.
Oh,
well, you were only 10, Mike. You were doing
that's right. I started
your
early.
internship. You were doing your internship.
He was a cub reporter. Yeah. Woman reported a sound like a small child crying.
Oh.
Unable to find anyone, but officers did find an abandoned bicycle which had been reported earlier.
What?
One crime leads to another. I don't know what.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe the bell was constantly
do
going.
Bicycles cry?
If they're spoken too badly.
No, if they're deflated.
Oh, if
they're deflated.
That's very good. That's yeah, I like that one. I guess I can handle bar that one. That's terrible.
Oh dear. Is he always like this?
Yes. Mike. Live the dream, Mike. Live the dream. This is living the dream.
I love that. This man has met me for a half an hour, and he's like, "Is he always like this?"
Yes. Because he does puns too. He does puns.
To an extent, not the way. Well, Gnarly Trombone is an actual pun. You're right.
Sort of a pun, yes.
But he didn't invent that. That was somebody else who...
He embraced that.
He embraced it. This is true. Officers responded to a home where someone reported a marijuana plant was growing in a flower pot. This is obviously long before that was okay. A 16-year-old boy showed officers there were no plants in the garden area. When officers found a flower pot with marijuana, the boy said, "Oops, forgot about that one."
Sorry.
Yeah. And I think he grew up to teach at UNC, as a matter of fact. Not going to mention names. 5-year-old child.
Oh, no.
Was left with a babysitter.
Oh, no, what? What?
Parents then moved out of the apartment.
You know that you're not loved when your family leaves you. I mean, how awful. That's awful.
This is. I'm doing all of these. Why don't you? This is the compiler and the author to an extent. I mean, taking these things. So just go random and pick a couple and do them.
July 4th, 1973, 1 a.m. Man reported his wife bit him and tried to kill him. He would not file a complaint. Woman reported someone had taken a plant from her backyard. Her son had taken it for the night.
Why would you take a plant for the night?
I'm not sure. 5:59 a.m.
Marijuana plant.
5:59 a.m. Family disturbance. Family was arguing about a dog.
They're almost like haiku in a sense.
Here we go. Woman reported her ex-husband struck her and threw her love seat out of the house.
Okay.
Not without my love seat.
Well, was he working for the White House recently?
Yeah. Here's one. Report of a peeping Tom. The man lived at the house and was checking on his wife.
Oh, creepy.
Is that still kind of illegal? Can you spy on your own?
It's your own house. I don't think so.
A woman reported her husband was breaking windows in their house. A man told police his wife had put love potion in his tea and he was afraid of her. He was taken to the psychiatric ward.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And a man reported his wife was throwing rocks at his house, and she tore the mailbox off the wall.
These were a little bit more like aggressive,
Yes,
huh?
yes,
They didn't have TV back then. They didn't have anything to do except
throwing
fight.
your love seat out, ripping mailboxes.
Here's one at midnight. A man reported sleeping on the railroad tracks. He woke up and went home.
See, I love the delicacy of that.
he
He
just
woke
woke
up,
up,
he went home.
Reported men throwing paper airplanes in a restaurant.
Is that illegal?
I don't know.
Take somebody's eye out
It
with
doesn't
that.
mean, just because they called the police doesn't mean it's illegal. So.
That's true.
Do a couple
You
more.
know,
Yeah.
well, tell Mike. So, Mike, what about the ones where they call in and they say, you know, I'm calling in asking for police assistance, but I won't talk to Sergeant X. You know, like, isn't that? Do you think
they have those. I know
like
still
regulars
today.
probably?
Oh, early when we started doing it was always somebody was asking for a supervisor.
Yes, they
Remember
always
that?
said I would like to speak to a supervisor.
They would never talk to the actual
No,
cop or the
yeah.
dispatcher. It was always,
Yeah.
we want to speak to a supervisor right now.
Some of them call want to talk only to the police chief too. So
Oh, of course.
Oh, that's even better.
report of a dog chasing ducks at the park. The dog was not chasing ducks. It went home and it went into the lake and refused to come out.
Oh.
Barking dog complaint. Officer could not find barking dog. Neighbor said the dog always stops barking when the police are called.
That's a miracle.
Is
That's
it?
a
Yeah.
miracle.
All you got to do is call it once and then you stop
And
the
the
dog.
dog
Yeah,
barking.
right, yeah.
I'm going to call the police.
Officer reported a westbound cow on 9th Street.
Those cows on the west side. You have to watch out for them. Yeah.
Man.
Westbound cow. It's a great name for a band.
Woman asked police to watch her house as she has trouble with people who put snakes and things in her house.
Oh,
Yeah, I would have trouble with that, too.
Yes. Or that shifty-eyed raccoon or the squirrels. Those usually also.
Well, here's something worse. 10:24 p.m. Loud screaming reported at West Lake. It's found to be frogs croaking.
Oh my God!
20 minutes later, received second report on loud screaming. The frogs were still croaking.
Oh my God!
Report of the theft of a mechanical hobby horse.
Wow.
Report of a
happens.
dog chasing. Oh, I got that X.
That's sad.
Pigeon taken into protective custody.
Wait.
Pigeon?
Pigeon.
Why?
Why?
That's all it
Pigeon
says.
taken into okay.
And released to Humane Society.
Oh.
Woman reported another woman stole her car and was holding a gun to the cat's head, threatening to shoot it if it didn't leave her cat's food alone. Man reported the theft of a pig from his backyard. Goose running loose in a motel parking lot.
Oh.
Muskrat trapped in a window well of her home.
That happens.
Yes.
3 men reported stealing duck from a park. They were contacted, but they'd already returned the duck.
Oh, that is
That's
yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
That's lovely. It's a happy.
And we sent them the bill.
Woman
And they
reported
reported on the web.
she found a sheep on the 3rd floor of an apartment house. These are all animal.
I see that, yeah.
I like that. That's a nice theme. That's a more gentle theme.
So
right?
far, yeah.
Not some of the scary stuff. Yeah.
Woman reported someone stole her skunk. Person reported someone was trying to get into his house and the person was scraping at the door. Officer found a 200-pound St. Bernard scratching the door.
Oh.
Possible burglary. Officers were warned that a very large, black, vicious dog in the building. But if officers shouts, "Down, bear," very loudly, the dog probably won't attack. See, that's one of the things that, one of my experiences
Yes.
Yeah.
in the Tribune. The craziest one was when the Wildlife Center opened down by
Oh
Kingsburg.
yes, yes.
I went down to the interview him, the owner, and what he was doing. And he was sitting outside a cage that had a tiger in it. And he said, "Would you like to get in there?" He said, "It's completely safe." So I said, of course, like stupidly I was. I went in. The tiger put his paws on my shoulders, and he was way above my head. And then he bit me on the underarm. But I was
Bit
wearing,
you?
yes,
Bit you?
I was wearing protective clothing. The guy was shouting, "Whatever you do, don't fall down."
You know
And he
why?
bit me,
Because
and
then he will
I came
maul
out.
you.
It didn't break the skin, but I had a blood clot on there for a month afterwards.
Whoa.
So it was. I've also been attacked by dogs while doing. Bitten 3 times by dogs doing covering stories. It's just
No, all right.
things
It's
that
one thing to be
happen.
bitten 3 times by dogs. It's quite another to be bitten by a tiger.
Yes, yeah. But
Well,
even,
I was covering a police dog story about the new police dogs that
Yes,
they brought in,
yes.
and one of them bit me while I was. The officer was showing me how they search people and things like that.
Oh, my Lord.
That dog goes back for more
And-
training.
And
Yeah,
I was doing a story
retraining.
out at Island Grove on
Oh,
the
yeah,
rodeo,
yeah.
and there was a dog there with puppies, and I got too close, and that dog bit me. So it's just, it happens. So.
Has anybody ever attacked you physically, human?
Thank
No.
God.
No,
Well,
I
thank
said I've
God,
been
yeah.
threatened, but I've never
Yeah.
been attacked, so that's a good thing.
Could it be that you have the 7 Dobermans and the and you have that tiger in your backyard?
yeah,
like,
that's right.
Come on, tiger.
What are one or two of your other favorite stories that you've covered? Because it couldn't have only been crime and death
was a
and
lot.
murder,
One of my
right?
favorites is that they once found the remains of a Greeley man who was killed in Vietnam. And no, they found it in Vietnam. But he'd been
Oh.
reported missing all that time, and it had been
Whoa.
30 years or so. And so they flew his wife out to Hawaii to claim the body, and then they flew her to Washington, D.C. to be buried at Arlington.
Whoa.
The Tribune flew me and a photographer with her to Hawaii to interview her and cover that scene, and then we flew to D.C. and covered the burial.
Whoa.
And we used a whole section of the paper to do that story. It was one of my favorites just because of what it involved and that type
Yeah,
of thing.
wow. That's like a
Yeah, it was
a big
it was-
endeavor.
It was very good.
Yeah.
So
So was that the deal that Gnarly, Trombone, and Coplog were kind of the antidote to having to cover all these deep,
I never thought of
sad, grisly...
never thought
Yeah,
that.
like a more fun,
It could
lighter,
be.
yeah.
that
That's
could
a
be.
great
I hadn't
question.
thought of it that way, but I guess that could be. You try not to get too involved in the story, but sometimes you can't avoid it. And, especially stories with missing kids or kids that are hurt. Those are tough to cover.
Don't tell them about our basement. just teasing.
No, but even since we've been here, we've seen the girl in the drain, and a lot of the
Oh, I
stuff
remember
too.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this thing in Eaton right now that's going on, that's where the 2 kids killed by the train.
That's right.
That's-
I mean, you would
that's a
think,
terrible
Mike,
thing.
yeah, like,
Yeah, it's so hard to cover some of them. It is tough.
Well, actually, a family member of yours just posted on Facebook about we need arms that come down for the Eaton.
the
tra-
train.
Is that
yeah.
who? Was that your wife or
That
some?
probably was my wife. Yeah.
Do you have kids? Do you
What?
have kids? Do you
Yes.
Have, yeah. What are they up to? What do they do?
One of them teaches at a college in Denver.
Nice.
The other one's in law enforcement.
Oh,
It
okay.
makes sense because probably growing up, you all hearing your stories, I would think, because they often say like, if the parent's a lawyer, then the kid goes into law, or they hear it. But hearing all that stuff, I would assume your children would be like, oh, something related to what you do. It would impress them,
Plus, we have 4 grandchildren,
Yay!
and we just found out about a month ago we're going to be great grandparents.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Because you can babysit, you can have them and return them home.
that's why I can call my son Grandpa, and it makes him.
Oh,
feel
that's
really-
hilarious. Well,
And does everybody write? So because you're a writer and your wife's was a teacher, there's a lot of writing going on.
Our daughter writes
Are they all
some.
writers?
Our
yeah.
daughter writes some.
oh, your daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I probably learned. My mom wrote a column for a weekly paper when I was growing up, and my sister worked for the Free Press in Colorado Springs for a while.
So were you from the Springs?
I was born in Colorado Springs.
Oh wow.
Then I went to high school up in Woodland Park, which is west of Colorado
Whoa,
Springs.
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
mountains. It was such a small town. Then there were 13 in my graduating class.
See, my mom was from a small town in Pennsylvania, and it was the same thing where they would know everyone, and they had one bus and they had one taxi. So when they would say you missed the bus, and if you were waiting for the taxi, the cab was out. It was out. That was it. Yeah, they knew everybody. Yeah. What was your mom's column?
It was just a family or community column that she wrote in a paper in Castle Rock.
Do you have any? Do you have any
No,
of them?
I don't. Oh, well, we've got some at home.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
My wife is a genealogist, and she has saved everything. She teaches a genealogy class.
You should bring that back. Well, you should, or maybe do something with your mom's columns. That would be all. Or what you could construct. You know.
My sister puts out a paper for her church.
Wow.
Every month. So
you're all writers.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Have you also thought about, I mean, you've got the kids, you've got grandkids, and soon to be, God willing, great grandkids and stuff, but have you thought about the compilation of all those newspapers that you have bound your columns? Have you made arrangements for what will happen?
David's always thinking, he's like Citizen Kane, like an archive, like, you know, where do things go? He always, you know, like Michener. Think of our library as Michener. So we have all Michener stuff.
The James Michener papers.
So David's like, where will your legacy of writing? That's his own dream.
Well,
so
the
he's
artifacts.
now transferring that onto you. That's his, you know.
Well, no, your notes, your original columns, the when they first appeared in the paper. How do you have them arranged, and what will happen to them?
Maybe he can't give that. Does that have direct names and stuff? Maybe he can't release it.
No, the columns are in the old papers at the Tribune.
Well, yeah.
They're in the old Tribune library, so they're all there. And the ones that I've done recently, of course, are in the system, so there's no problem there. But
well, I'm talking about back when you typed your draft.
He's thinking like artifacts, like if you ever had your own, like, you know, like Michener, before a novel came out, he'd jot stuff or he'd type stuff and then he'd re-edit and then they post that with pictures of his life and like that kind of stuff. That's David's thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have all, for the book, I have a file that's huge with all my notes from everything. I remember that I was going to write a book on it, so I saved all my notes from the trial and everything. So I have all that.
Because even legally, so I wrote a book in New York about I study aging too. So the closure of senior centers, how the policies in the city close senior centers. So, but it was vetted for like legal stuff. I had a lot of vetting done to it. I'm sure you too. People probably read over and said, you know.
Well, we had our vetting about 20 years ago. It was a rabbi presided.
But you have to. But you have to have notes because you have to support what you're saying.
That's right.
And that's what I assume you're used to as a reporter. That you have to, what is it? Two independent. I don't know how you do it. Two independent
sources.
Yeah, like yeah.
That's why when I do a cop story, I try to interview the suspect, everyone involved, to get all sides of the story.
Yeah. But that's tough. That must be tough.
It's not easy covering cops. That's all. So.
And then to figure out, like, because my nana would say, every book has two sides or 2 pages, so you get 2 very differing accounts. It's like us with students, or saying, oh yeah, my computer, whatever, or like the story.
Here's a question: in overall, in terms of percentages, in covering cops and robbers, have you found that cops are generally trustworthy and right, or the thin blue line just cuts off any idea of?
No, I think the cops that I've found in covering Greeley have been very fair, very good people. I've found very few that I've had a problem with. So,
wow.
And it's just a good thing to cover. Something else that I didn't talk about, we conduct tours of Lindgrove Cemetery. And there's some amazing people buried out there.
Oh, the historical stuff,
yes,
right?
So
who's in there?
Yeah.
Oh, W.D. French is one of them. He was a man hanged in Greeley 100 years ago.
For?
He had killed his partner in a fight over a bag of flour.
Remember when we were fighting last week about that bag of flour? I came at you with a knife. Cooler head prevailed.
You didn't see the bill from Lindgrove, and I saved a little space there, yeah.
What happened? He was from Evans, and he was in the Greeley jail. And some of those evil people from Evans came up, woke up the jailer to get the key, and he said, "I don't have the key. The sheriff has the key." Woke up the sheriff to get the key, and he said, "I don't have the key." So they broke down the door.
Oh my God!
It's like Leo Frank.
And pulled him out, and they hanged him right in front of the courthouse, where the courthouse is now. In a tree there, and they took pictures, and the pictures are made into postcards.
What?
That's what they used to do to blacks in the South.
No, but that.
And they've had a trial for him now, a mock trial, just bringing people in to do this. Just it wasn't really a trial in court, but it was a trial.
If he were alive, would
every
he
trial
been found guilty?
he's been found not guilty.
Whoa.
Because his the guy he killed had pulled a gun on him too.
Now, is there
Also, not guilty by reason of he's defending himself.
Is
not
there anybody in that cemetery that is like
artistically famous?
Yeah, or not like? Is it all like because like who else is in there?
Yeah.
Who else is on your tour?
We have the circus train people. There was a circus train that had a fire on it between here and Fort Collins. The circus, so the show must go on, detached the train.
Oh, come on.
The car left it there and went on to their show in Denver.
Must have been Amtrak.
So
That's horrible.
The Greeley people had to go pull 11 bodies out.
That's
and they're
horrible.
buried at Lynn Grove in a huge box. And just not long ago, the cemetery had the names put on. So they just learned the names recently. They found them. And so the names have been added to that.
That's horrible.
And we've got Chief Rain in the Face. There was
What?
Chief Rain in the Face.
Yeah.
His name came up recently, and he was supposedly killed and buried at Lynn Grove. So I tried to find it, and there's no gravestone. They had it one time, but it was stolen, of course, with a name like that on it.
Chief Rain.
So I
in the
started
face,
researching it,
Yeah.
and found that he may have died. There may be another body buried in South Dakota, I think it was. And so I called that cemetery, and the guy said, "This is amazing. We don't have him here, but you're the second call I've received today about him." His great-great-great-granddaughter was trying to track him down. So I called her.
Oh my God, Mike.
And to see where it stood, and she said, "We haven't been able to find it." And so I kept researching and finally tracked down that he had been on a reservation when he died. But on that reservation, he went a little bit crazy and was going around pretending to scalp other people sleeping at night.
Pretending.
And they changed his name to Crazy Man Who Walks at Night. And that's why Rain in the Face wasn't found.
So
but his tombstone was Crazy Man Who Walks at Night?
No, not here. It was Rain in the Face because that's what they thought it was. But
and is he in Greeley?
we're not sure.
Whoa.
We know where the grave is supposedly located, but we're not sure if he's there or not. And the daughter said she traced down the Crazy Man Who Walks at Night, and that could be him somewhere in South Dakota. So.
Actually, if Trump continues tweaking, he will be Crazy Man Who Walks at Night.
No, doesn't sleep at night.
Yeah.
Wow. Is there anybody happy in that cemetery? Like someone who had a nice long life, was well known, and then just decided to go,
Ben Eaton.
Oh, Eaton, the guy who found the Eaton. All right, there you go.
That's a good
one.
one.
That's a happy thing.
Yeah,
Is it happy?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I'm like, I don't know.
He's buried there, and there's.
Is he buried in Eaton Grove?
Yeah, of course. He should be buried. Yeah.
The cemetery, the tours have become so big, we have to break it up into 3 sections because we have so many people. We go up and just, when we see an interesting tombstone, I go back and find the papers and the obits, and my wife researches the family and things because she's a
do
genealogist.
cemeteries keep really good records? I mean, do they?
Pretty good.
Yeah, because I'm wondering.
We're also involved in Wreaths Across America, in which we put wreaths on the veterans' graves at Christmas. And we've been
that's a
working
little
with
better record keeping.
Oh yeah, and we've walked the cemetery with Chris and Bill Ruth, who she heads it up, and we've walked and checked all the graves to see if there's a veteran's name on them. So and we just found there's a Congressional Medal of Honor winner there, and there's one in Evans Cemetery. What was odd about the one in Evans Cemetery, they had a tombstone that had sunk down on the ground, and so the workmen just pulled it up and remounted it.
Oh my
And
God.
on the bottom it had a Congressional Medal of Honor.
Whoa.
They didn't even know he was there. He and the one in Greeley were both with Custer's Last Stand.
Oh my goodness.
That's where they got their medals, from that.
So they're wow.
I mean, still tragic stuff. I mean, Custer's Last Stand did not go well.
Wow.
But they both lived through it and both got medals of honor because they were helping the wounded.
That's amazing.
They came back here to live, and then when they died, they were buried in the cemeteries here.
But that's happier. That's a normal life, and it's a long life and then a good.
There's probably like 3 people buried there from Custer's penultimate stand. We don't read much about that one, but it went a little better.
You let him have a microphone?
Yes. Mike, honestly, I can't stop him. I just set up the tech. And then I usually, like, if you weren't here, we have a little. It's like a 7-Eleven, not like the bad 7-Eleven in your book. It's called Munchie Mart at the University Center, and I'd now be going to get him a chocolate shake, and he likes mint tea.
Wow.
So he has this whole He sometimes a bagel, you know.
You leave him here alone with the microphone?
Yeah, he enjoys it. Yeah.
Although I am planning to get up a committee to put rocks on Jewish cemeteries on Hanukkah, so that way they can go put little stones.
They do have a Jewish section at the Lynn Grove Cemetery.
I know
They
that.
do have rocks on the stones. We tell the people the story about rocks and how they remembered that way.
But Christians get flowers. They get nice American flags. Put a rock. Maybe put a candy or something.
We once heard a story of someone who was either from Sweden or Norway. We never know what happened. But before this person was dying, and they said to me, before I die, I have to see the grave of my ancestors. And I don't know what that's about. So that was a custom where the person knew they were dying, but part of their process was, and I don't think they were local. Me neither. And I never got the full. I don't know what that custom was.
Scoot over, basically, and say, hey, I'm going to need room.
Yeah. I thought maybe they wanted a trip to Norway. That was my thinking.
We have one story of one of the Jewish people living here who grew up knowing that the Ku Klux Klan was active in Colorado and in Greeley.
Mike,
and the Klan would come. There were no black people living in Greeley at that time. And so they'd burn a cross on the Jewish people's lawn. And he said his dad knew everybody, even with their hoods on. Hi, Joe, how are you? And it would turn into a more social thing. So
that's
very
well,
strange.
back in the day, they were the regular people, and then at night they put on hoods, and the same people you saw at the drugstore.
So
same people I would invite for drinks and tea and lynchings. Yeah.
But now now Greeley's over 10. I mean, it's a city, so it's over 10.
And we still get
Over
flyers.
Over 100,000.
100,000. Yeah.
And then just last week there were flyers posted in a couple of the buildings at UNC from a neo-Nazi organization called something Europa.
It's something I don't know. It's
Identity Europa.
Something, yeah. Colleges. I mean, I've taught at so many places. Every college has stuff.
Yeah.
And you get stuff, but it's, and but now we're much bigger. So
I'm very surprised they gave me permission to put those flyers up. But
you would never do that. Mike, I apologize for him in advance.
It's not even banks anymore.
Yes.
We're getting done.
But I'll tell you that Mike's if he's reported on crime and funny things.
I've met enough crazy people. I know.
He knows. He's very used to.
Well, we have gotten used to having Mike Peters here in the neighborhood.
What an honor to have Mike here. Yeah, and then because we read you, but now we see you.
It was my honor.
Oh, it was our honor, Mike.
An honor and a pleasure, and we want to remind folks that if you want to read these books by Mike Peters, including The Cornfield, that one they can't get, but this one they can buy. This one you can get some money out of.
He's selling your book, Mike.
So The Cornfield, available on Amazon and also at the offices.
It's a real cornfield on the cover.
Yeah, there's an actual cornfield that's mentioned and talked about in the book. There's also pictures in there, including color, which is way cool.
Yeah, that's nice.
And this fun book called Greeley 1917, Stories from 100 Years ago.
The new book to have Mike.
Well, that's not. When do you think that'll be available and done?
On the trombones, probably midsummer, I think. I haven't started to work on it yet, but all I have to do is collect old ones and go and find my favorites. So.
Nice.
And also the other crime book, or is that still in the nascent stage? The one about the 10-year-old.
The 10-year
anniversary. That's just a story. I'm working on for the trip. They asked me to do the 10-year anniversary story. So.
Yeah, but sometimes stories become books too, Mike.
This one could, because
if you're doing research.
It was on 48 Hours. And it was on national TV. There was so many things going on with it. So.
And just remind everybody, when does the Gnarly Trombone come out, and when does 100 Years Ago come out in the Trib?
Okay, Saturday mornings is the Trombone, and it's usually a humor column, although sometimes I do a serious one, like I did this week.
Yes.
And then Mondays is the 100 Years Ago.
Cool.
Nice.
Well, I hope you keep doing all these columns for another 100 years.
Well, I do too. That would be nice.
Yes, yes.
So, Mike Peters, a pleasure to have you in the neighborhood. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.